So picture this. The Galactic Council is having what you might call the mother of all emergency meetings. The massive chamber is buzzing with panic, and you can practically taste the fear in the recycled air. Ambassador Kethval, this tall blue creature with way too many eyes, is standing at the center podium trying to keep his voice steady. But everyone can see his hands shaking as he pulls up the footage that's got the entire galaxy in an uproar. The holographic display flickers to life, showing these absolutely massive ships that just appeared at the outer rim 3 days ago. And when I say massive, I mean these things are bigger than entire space stations. But here's the thing that's got everyone freaking out. They look like complete junk. Seriously, imagine if you took every piece of scrap metal you could find, welded it together with zero regard for how it looks, and somehow made it fly through space. That's what we're dealing with here. The ships are radiating heat like small suns. Their hulls glow with energy signatures that would cook most civilized species alive just from being in the same solar system. The fusion drives powering these monsters are so primitive that the Council's top scientists are scratching their heads trying to figure out how they even work. It's like watching someone power a starship with a campfire, except somehow it's actually working better than their advanced technology. But the real nightmare fuel comes from the biological scans. The computers keep running the data over and over because the results seem impossible. Whatever species is flying these death traps is living in conditions that break every known law of biology. We're talking about gravity levels that would turn a Zephyrian into paste in seconds. The atmospheric readings show gas mixtures that would dissolve Centauri skin on contact. The radiation levels inside those ships are off the charts, literally. The Council's measuring equipment keeps shorting out trying to get accurate readings. Council member HFY Story from the water world of Aquanes is practically hyperventilating through her breathing apparatus. She keeps pointing at the readouts with her web fingers, making these awful gurgling sounds that her translator keeps rendering as expressions of pure terror. Her species needs precisely controlled aquatic environments to survive, and just looking at the human ship data is making her gills close up in fear. The insectoid representative from Hive Colony 7 is clicking his mandibles so rapidly it sounds like a machine gun. His compound eyes are darting between the displays, and his antennae are twitching in what can only be described as complete bewilderment. His species has conquered dozens of worlds using their perfect environmental control systems, but these readings suggest creatures that don't need environmental control at all. Ambassador Kethval switches to the close-up scans of the ship interiors, and the room goes dead silent. The thermal imaging shows thousands of life forms moving around inside those metal death boxes, like it's the most normal thing in the universe. They're not wearing protective suits. They're not in sealed environmental pods. They're just walking around in conditions that should kill them instantly, apparently having conversations, and going about their daily business. The atmospheric analysis is what really sends everyone over the edge. These creatures are breathing a gas mixture that's nearly 21% oxygen, a concentration so high it would cause explosive combustion in most civilized atmospheres. They're living in nitrogen levels that would be toxic to Arcturians, and somehow processing trace gases that would shut down Rigelian nervous systems permanently. The gravity readings are equally insane. These beings have evolved on a world where the gravitational pull is so intense that most council species would be crushed flat just trying to stand up. Yet the movement patterns inside the ships suggest they find their artificial gravity slightly too weak for comfort. One of the thermal signatures appears to be doing what the computer tentatively identifies as recreational physical exercise, apparently working out for fun in conditions that would be torture for anyone else. The meeting chamber erupts in panic discussions as representatives from 47 different worlds try to process what they're seeing. Some are demanding immediate evacuation of the Outer Rim territories. Others are calling for the mobilization of every defensive fleet in the galaxy. A few are suggesting that maybe, just maybe, they should try talking to these impossible creatures before assuming they're hostile. But deep down, every single being in that chamber is thinking the same terrifying thought. What kind of nightmare world could possibly produce creatures like this, and what do they want with the rest of the galaxy? Meanwhile, Captain Jake Thompson is standing on the bridge of the Earthship Defiant, sipping coffee from a mug that's held together with electrical tape, and wondering why aliens are apparently even worse at first contact than humans are. The bridge around him looks like it was built in someone's garage, which honestly isn't far from the truth. Half the control panels are jury-rigged with spare parts from 3 different manufacturers, and there's still a sticky note on the navigation computer that says, "Don't push the red button unless we're all going to die anyway." His screens are lighting up like a Christmas tree with incoming transmissions from what has to be the most polite alien fleet in the history of space exploration. These ships are gorgeous, all smooth curves and gleaming metal that practically screams, "We spent centuries perfecting this design." They're keeping what they probably think is a safe distance, hovering about 50,000 kilometers away like nervous cats, watching a dog they can't quite figure out. Every few minutes, another batch of messages comes flooding in, and Jake's starting to think these aliens might be even more anxious than humans meeting new people at a party. Lieutenant Amy Foster has been hunched over the communications console for 3 straight days now, surrounded by empty coffee cups and snack wrappers, trying to make sense of the alien chatter. She's got dark circles under her eyes and that slightly manic look that comes from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. The translation computer keeps spitting out fragments like urgent biological concern and unprecedented radiation tolerance, mixed with what sounds like mathematical equations and possibly recipe instructions. Amy keeps muttering things like, "Okay, so this part might be asking about our atmospheric requirements, or they could be trying to sell us insurance." Hard to tell. She's got 3 different translation programs running simultaneously, and none of them agree on anything except that the aliens seem really worried about something. The main screen keeps displaying partial translations that fade in and out like a broken neon sign. Down in engineering, Chief Roberts' crew are performing daily miracles just keeping the ship running. The Defiant wasn't exactly built for deep space exploration. She started life as a cargo hauler before someone decided to strap some weapons on her and call her a warship. The fusion reactor makes concerning noises that Roberts insists are completely normal, while quietly keeping a fire extinguisher within arm's reach at all times. The artificial gravity generator has a habit of cutting out during important moments, and the life support system occasionally decides to play practical jokes by adjusting the temperature without warning. Roberts walks around with a toolbox that's mostly duct tape and spare wire, fixing things with the kind of creative engineering that would give proper ship designers nightmares. His team has turned running repairs into an art form, patching holes with whatever's handy and rerouting power through systems that were never meant to work together. They got a betting pool going on which critical system will break down next, and Roberts is currently winning because he bet on something we haven't even discovered is broken yet. The breakthrough finally comes on day 3 when Amy suddenly sits up straight and starts yelling. The translation computer has finally cracked enough of the alien language to produce actual sentences instead of cosmic word salad. The main message starts scrolling across the screen, and Jake reads out loud in disbelief. "Unknown vessels, you have entered restricted space. For the safety of all biological entities, you are required to immediately surrender for species evaluation and containment protocols." The bridge goes completely quiet for about 5 seconds. Then Jake starts laughing, not a polite chuckle, but the kind of deep belly laugh that comes from pure absurdity. Here they are, flying around in a ship held together with determination and spare parts, and these aliens want them to surrender for their own safety. It's like being told by a butterfly that you're too dangerous to fly. The rest of the bridge crew joins in with that particular expression humans get when someone tries to boss them around without understanding what they're dealing with. It's the same look that made humans decide to climb the tallest mountains just because they were there, or figure out how to fly by strapping wings to their arms and jumping off cliffs until someone got it right. It's the expression that says, "Watch me do it anyway," in every language humans have ever spoken. Amy finally stops laughing long enough to ask, "So, Captain, should I tell them we appreciate their concern, but we're good?" Jake grins and settles back in his chair, watching those pretty alien ships maintain their careful distance. "Tell them we're happy to chat, but we'll keep our freedom. Thanks." The meeting at the neutral station is where things get really interesting, and by interesting, I mean absolutely hilarious from a human perspective. Picture this massive space station that looks like it was designed by committee, all clean lines and sterile surfaces that scream, "We spent way too much time making this look perfect." The human delegation walks into what's basically the galaxy's fanciest conference room, and immediately you can tell something's off. The alien diplomats aren't just sitting at a conference table like normal people would. Oh no, that would be too simple. Instead, they're hiding behind layers of force fields, radiation barriers, and what looks like the most over-engineered protective equipment in the universe. Ambassador Zefkri from the Arcturian Empire is sitting inside what can only be described as a bubble within a bubble, surrounded by air filtration systems that are working overtime. The Centauri representative is wearing a full environmental suit that makes astronauts look underdressed. And there's a Rigelian delegate who's communicating entirely through remote hologram because apparently being in the same room as humans is too dangerous. Captain Jake Thompson and his small team walk in wearing their regular uniforms. No special equipment, no protective gear, just humans being humans. The contrast is so absurd that Chief Engineer Lisa Davis has to bite her lip to keep from grinning. The aliens are looking at them like they're watching someone juggle live grenades while riding a unicycle. Ambassador Zefkri clears his throat and begins explaining, very carefully and with multiple translation matrices running simultaneously, why Earth has received the coveted rating of Class XI Deathworld. His voice is shaking slightly as he pulls up holographic displays showing planetary classifications. Class I worlds are described as paradise planets with perfect conditions. Class V worlds require some environmental modification. Class X worlds are considered barely habitable with massive technological support. Then he gets to Class XI, and his voice drops to almost a whisper. These are worlds so hostile that the Galactic Council assumed they were completely sterile. The gravitational forces alone would crush most known life forms. The atmospheric composition would dissolve tissue on contact. The radiation levels would scramble DNA faster than most species could repair it. The temperature variations would flash freeze or instantly vaporize the vast majority of galactic citizens. Jake raises his hand like he's in school and asks, "So what you're saying is Earth's a tough neighborhood?" The aliens stare at him like he just asked if water is wet while standing in the middle of an ocean. The Centauri ambassador starts listing his species requirements, and it's like listening to someone describe the most delicate flower in the universe. They need atmospheric pressure controlled to within 0.001% accuracy. Temperature variations of more than 2 degrees would cause mass casualties. Their gravity requirements are so specific that they travel with personal gravity field generators. Radiation exposure that humans would consider a mild sunburn will be fatal within hours. The Aquani's representative chimes in through her water-filled communication chamber, explaining that her people require precisely balanced aquatic environments with mineral content monitored to the molecular level. A single drop of Earth's ocean water would be like drinking acid to her species. As each alien delegate describes their environmental needs, it becomes painfully clear that what humans consider a pleasant spring day, maybe 75 degrees, gentle breeze, partly cloudy, would be an instant death sentence for most of the galaxy. The idea of humans going to the beach for fun, lying in direct sunlight that would blind a Zephyrian, swimming in water that would burn Centauri skin, breathing unfiltered air that would poison an Arcturian, it's beyond their comprehension. Chief Engineer Lisa Davis decides to break the stunned silence by casually mentioning their ship modifications. She explains, in the most matter-of-fact tone possible, that their primitive fusion drives were actually designed to operate during Earth's hurricane season. She talks about how they had to account for wind speeds that would tear most spacecraft apart, atmospheric pressure changes that would implode delicate alien vessels, and electrical storms that generate more energy than some planets use a year. You can actually hear the collective gulp from the alien delegation. Several force fields flicker as their operators' hands shake. The Rigelian hologram glitches for a moment as if the projector can't believe what it's processing. Then someone makes a mistake of mentioning the Hegemony War, and suddenly the entire room's energy changes. Every alien delegate leans forward despite their protective barriers. The Hegemony has been steamrolling to the outer rim for months, crushing every defense the Galactic Council could mount. Their technology is superior, their tactics are flawless, and their ships are practically invincible. Jake looks around the room at all these terrified alien faces and asks, "So these Hegemony folks, they giving you trouble?" The understatement of the century hangs in the air like a challenge, and suddenly everyone's paying very, very close attention to what the humans might say next. Now, the hegemony. These guys were the ultimate bad news, the kind of threat that made entire star systems pack up and move to different neighborhoods. For 6 months straight, they'd been steamrolling to the outer rim, like they were playing some cosmic video game with cheat codes enabled. 17 systems had fallen to their advance, and it wasn't even close. We're talking about complete domination so thorough that most species just started evacuating planets the moment hegemony scouts showed up in their solar systems. Their ships were absolute technological masterpieces that made every other fleet in the galaxy look like they were built from toy parts. Picture vessels so advanced they seemed to bend the laws of physics just by existing. These weren't just warships. They were floating fortresses covered in energy shields so powerful they could shrug off direct hits from weapons that could level mountains. The hegemony's defensive technology was so far ahead of everyone else that conventional plasma cannons, particle beams, and fusion torpedoes just bounced off their hulls like raindrops hitting a windshield. But their offensive capabilities were what really made civilized species wake up screaming. The hegemony packed weapons that could crack planets like eggs, literally splitting worlds apart from orbit if they felt like making a point. They had energy beams that could slice through the thickest armor plating like it was paper, and targeting systems so precise they could take out individual buildings from 3 star systems away. Their battle tactics were flawless, executed with machine-like precision that never left room for enemy counterattacks. Every species that faced them had the same story. Either you ran fast enough to escape, or you didn't run at all, because there was nothing left for you to run with. The lucky ones were the cowards who fled at the first sign of hegemony's ships. The unlucky ones tried to fight, and discovered that courage doesn't mean much when your best weapons can't even scratch the enemy's paint job. Admiral Rex Thor commanded the hegemony's 3rd Fleet with the kind of cold confidence that comes from never losing a battle. His flagship, the Inevitable Conquest, was a technological marvel 3 kilometers long and packed with enough firepower to sterilize entire continents. Rex Thor had personally overseen the destruction of 47 enemy fleets, and each victory had been so one-sided it barely qualified as combat. His tactical computers had started rating enemy encounters as target practice rather than actual battles. So when the sensors picked up the approaching human fleet at Kepler Junction, Rex Thor's first reaction was mild curiosity followed by professional boredom. The human ships looked like they'd been assembled in someone's backyard using spare parts and optimistic thinking. Their hulls were patched and scarred, their weapon systems were obviously improvised, and their formation looked more like a traffic jam than a military formation. Rex Thor's tactical officers were actually placing bets on whether this was supposed to be a distraction for some clever attack, or just the most pathetic suicide mission in galactic military history. The Admiral studied the sensor readings with growing amusement. The human ships were radiating heat signatures that suggested their engines were held together with hopes and prayers. Their weapon systems registered as primitive projectile launchers that belonged in a museum, not a space battle. Most ridiculous of all, their ships seemed to be carrying life support systems designed for creatures that could survive in conditions that would kill proper civilized beings instantly. Rex Thor decided to make this educational. He'd disable these primitive craft quickly and cleanly, maybe capture a few specimens for the science division to study. It would be interesting to dissect creatures that were apparently too stupid to realize they were already dead. He gave the order to raise shields to minimum power. No point wasting energy on such obvious weaklings, and prepare to demonstrate once again why the hegemony ruled the galaxy. His first hint that maybe his calculations were slightly off came when the human boarding pods launched. These weren't elegant assault craft with sophisticated penetration systems. They were basically metal boxes with rockets strapped to them, flying straight at his ship like someone had loaded cannonballs into the universe's biggest gun. Rex Thor watched with detached interest as his shields prepared to swat these primitive projectiles aside like annoying insects. Then the boarding pods punched straight through his energy barriers like they weren't even there. The impact alarm started screaming as chunks of metal, and very angry humans came crashing through multiple layers of advanced defensive technology that had never failed before. Rex Thor stared at his tactical display in complete bewilderment as his officers reported hull breaches in 17 different sections simultaneously. Turns out kinetic weapons, good old-fashioned, throw something really hard at the problem technology, don't particularly care about energy shields designed to stop sophisticated beam weapons. The humans had basically solved the hegemony's impenetrable defense system by hitting it with rocks, except the rocks were full of soldiers who seemed genuinely excited about the whole experience. Admiral Rex Thor's final transmission back to Hegemony Command was a kind of desperate, panic message that nobody ever expects to receive from their most successful military commander. His voice was shaking as he tried to explain what was happening to his fleet, and you could hear explosions and what sounded like power tools running in the background. The message was fragmented and kept cutting out, but the basic gist was a frantic warning about humans who apparently treated space combat like it was some kind of weekend hobby they'd picked up for fun. Rex Thor kept repeating that these creatures were using tactics that made no sense according to every military manual ever written. They were ramming ships with mining equipment, using industrial plasma cutters as weapons, and somehow turning cargo containers into guided missiles. His tactical computers had completely given up trying to predict human behavior, because every time they calculated what the humans should do next, the humans did something completely different that worked anyway. The most disturbing part of his transmission was when Rex Thor described watching human soldiers cut through a ship's reinforced bulkheads using what looked like construction equipment from a hardware store. These weren't precision military tools. They were literally using heavy-duty power drills and welding torches like they were renovating a house instead of boarding a warship. And they were moving through a ship like the artificial gravity was set too low for their comfort, which was impossible because hegemony artificial gravity was calibrated for optimal performance across all known species. What really broke Rex Thor's composure was realizing that the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. His security cameras picked up audio of human soldiers actually laughing while they worked their way through a ship, making jokes, and apparently having casual conversations about sports and family barbecues while dismantling the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. One group of humans had apparently stopped to admire the craftsmanship of his ship's engineering section before systematically tearing apart with tools that belonged in a garage. The human fleet, which had started as a ragtag collection of barely functional ships, was growing by the hour as more vessels showed up from Earth. But these weren't military reinforcements in any traditional sense. Mining ships built for asteroid work were arriving with improvised weapon systems that looked like someone had welded ship cannons onto industrial equipment. Cargo haulers designed for a peaceful trade had been converted into assault vessels by the simple process of filling them with very determined humans and pointing them at hegemony ships. The mining vessels turned out to be particularly effective because they were already designed to tear apart massive chunks of rock and metal, skills that translated surprisingly well to dismantling enemy warships. The cargo haulers used their loading equipment to grab hegemony fighters right out of space, and their industrial-grade engines to ram larger vessels with the kind of kinetic force usually reserved for asteroid impacts. Rex Thor's last coherent words before his transmission cut out permanently were a warning that humans seem to view military technology not as sophisticated weapons of war, but as interesting puzzles to be taken apart and figured out. His engineering teams reported that captured humans were actually studying hegemony systems with genuine curiosity, apparently trying to understand how everything worked so they could build better versions themselves. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler Junction, the Galactic Council finally worked up enough courage to send a survey team to assess the aftermath. What they expected to find was a debris field and maybe some scattered human settlements struggling to survive in the harsh conditions of contested space. What they actually discovered made them question everything they thought they knew about how civilizations were supposed to work. The survey team found thriving human colonies cheerfully setting up shop on worlds that the hegemony had specifically marked as uninhabitable death zones, planets so hostile that they'd been used as punishment assignments for hegemony prisoners. These weren't desperate refugee camps or heavily fortified survival outposts. These were actual communities with families, schools, and what appeared to be recreational facilities. The survey team's xenobiologist, Dr. Vexani, spent 3 weeks documenting human settlements and filed a report that his superiors initially refused to believe. He described children playing outside in atmospheric conditions that would require full hazmat suits for most galactic species to survive even brief exposure. He watched families having picnics on worlds where the background radiation should have been lethal, and observed humans swimming in lakes with chemical compositions that would dissolve Centauri tissue on contact. The final report concluded that humans seem to view the entire galaxy not as some dangerous frontier requiring careful exploration and gradual colonization, but as a new neighborhood they just moved into and planned to fix up according to their own preferences. Whether the current residents approved of the renovations was apparently not a major concern in human planning processes.